Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in just 30 minutes. I'm Mike Solitro, your host, and today we are very excited to be speaking with Jason Pike. A decorated combat veteran with multiple deployments, Lieutenant Colonel Jason Pike served 31 years in the United States Army as both an enlisted and an officer, including 9 years overseas in 5 countries. His passion is to tell stories in his book, a soldier against all odds. Jason earned over 30 service awards and badges and survived a wicked amount of military training. This book consolidates his work into a format for easy digestion by the average reader. His diversity of Army jobs, assignments, and schools from ages 17 to 48 sets this military memoir up differently than most. His ups and downs of a life in uniform will captivate you. Jason's brutal honesty on how he did it while disclosing many sacred secrets about how he survived is unique. The author also speaks to you from his heart in the audiobook on how and why things happen in the aftermath of a chaotic career in uniform. After listening to or reading this memoir, you'll come away thinking, I never seen the like. Jason, welcome. We are really thrilled to be speaking with you today.
Hey, I'm honored to be on the show, Mike.
Of course, of course. And that's quite a bio and a very impressive career in the Army. 31 years is a long time. At what point, if at any of those 31 years, did you decide, I need to put this into a book?
That was probably around the time my father died. Death has a way of speaking to you in different ways. And my dad was a storyteller. And once he died, I thought I would want to put pen to paper on this book and dedicate it to my father and start working it that way. Yeah, that was probably it's been on nagging on my mind for many years since his death.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear about that, but as you referenced, sometimes the loss of life can kind of put things into perspective, which it seems to have done for you, especially to get these stories into one place. Was the process of getting the book written, was that something that you kind of anticipated what it would be like? Was it what you expected? Was it harder, easier? What was that like?
It was harder, much harder than what I expected. If I had to do it over again, I probably wouldn't have done it because my father, I tell you what, I went to the hospital because of this book because I had so many stories. And when you see your life written down, and if you're honest with yourself, which I was here, brutal honesty, it does a number of things to the body that I didn't know. I went into the ICU, the intensive care unit, for blood clots because I was stressing out, having flashbacks, and I was nearly going to die. Matter of fact, because of this book. At the time, at the time of death, when they thought I was going to die, they thought I was a smoker, and I said I've never been a smoker. And but in hindsight, what it was, I was sitting and I was stressing, and it became a huge task for me. And that's just death. I had a few anxiety attacks, but it was much harder than what I thought it was going to be. Put it that way.
Okay. I mean, it's amazing how the mind can affect the body in so many ways. So just from doing something that you weren't accustomed to doing, some of those more difficult and more stressful, just caused those extreme physical ailments. It's terrible. But you did come out. The book has been published. What are people telling you about it who read it so far?
There's been a ton of reviews. Amazon has over 80, 88, 89, 90 reviews. They're all coming to me saying, "Hey, great job, wonderful thing." Now they put their arms around me, and I'm doing podcasts and getting the word out this way. And for the most part, it's doing pretty good. Yeah.
That's excellent, excellent, excellent to hear. Going backwards a little bit, what was it like walking into the Army as a 17-year-old? Was that your plan? How did you end up there?
So I was not an academic. I was not college bound by any means whatsoever. SAT scores, high school counselors, everybody, experts, everyone says you cannot go to college. So the option was to go into the military at the age of 17. I had failed, believe it or not, I failed reading and writing in the first grade. I was diagnosed with a learning disability. that did reading and writing. So I said, well, I joined when I was in high school, between my 11th and 12th grade years. I went into the National Guard, which was the lowest. Everything was from the bottom, whether it be academics or whether it be as a private, as a 17-year-old private. And it was scary. It was very scary. I'm going into a place that's going to be screaming and yelling at me, and people are going to be doing a lot of wild things. And it was a hell of an experience. It was.
At any point during that first year, were you thinking, all right, I know my options were limited, but this was not the right one for me?
Well, yeah, I thought I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I was one of the worst privates in the platoon in 1983, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. My drill sergeant wanted to kick me out. He sent me to a criminal confinement facility for
Wow.
screw ups. It was a scared straight program. It was not necessarily. I didn't do anything criminal. It's just that I couldn't drink water coming out of that damn fire hose that was coming out so fast. I couldn't get it together, and so him and me and another private went to a scared straight confinement facility, and they put a different level of hell on us, and to either break us out of the army or to get our act together. One guy broke, I stayed in, and that was pretty much like a Jesus Christ event. And then I sort of got my stuff a little bit more together. Not totally, but I stayed in. I kind of thought this is the military, about the only thing I could do. So I wanted to stay and give it as much try as I could, try out as hard as I could. Yeah.
As you were saying that, I was like, this is going to be his, as you said, come to Jesus moment, or at least where he turns the corner. So that makes a ton of sense. So having I think 9 deployments and over, or 5 deployments, multiple different countries. What the first time you go, I'm sure it's unlike the next, because you just don't know what you don't know. How do you prepare? Do the fellow soldiers help you out? What are you thinking, and how do you get ready to kind of leave for that first time?
Yeah, so I had 9 years living overseas in 5 different countries. So I had that. Well, so every deployment would be different. The countries that I went to were such as Canada, Italy, Germany, Afghanistan, Korea, El Salvador. So let's just say, yeah, they would prepare you. Just for example, for war, they would prepare. That would be a very serious thing to go to. So yes, you not only were you a soldier, but they prepared you in advance much more than you were to go to a war. They have to validate you. They just don't send you off in like a mass formation. Like they have to prepare you. They train you for a month or two just to get into the war. So yes, you're very prepared for that. Now, other countries, they're just like, okay, we're going to go up here and we're going to train, we're going to deploy. It'll be another deployment. It's not necessarily a war, but they will do a little preparation. But war is going to be completely different than just going to and supporting an operation overseas. Yes.
Okay, and that makes sense. Whether or not it's in the book, if you meet someone and you've got one story to tell them about your, decorated 30+ year career, do you have one that you go to, or is there one that pops into your head that you like to tell?
Well, yes. This whole book is about inspiration, hope, and never quit. There is one story I think a lot of folks like. People identify with being up shit creek or neck deep in shit. That's a term we use where we're in a very bad place. But let me tell you, I've been there. I've done it. I almost drowned in a cesspool in South Korea. That's one of the stories a lot of people identify with, but I've literally been there. So in the military, we do a lot of training, and we walk in the woods a lot, and we have to show our competence in land navigation. Land navigation is looking for points on map, showing your competency that you can read a map and you can go from point to point at night or in the day. Well, I was doing an exercise at night alone on the demilitarized zone of South Korea. I was a young man, probably age 27. And I was walking along a rice bank, and I knew that there was a cesspool out there. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. So I wanted to stay away from the smell. But it's at night, and we cannot use flashlights, and shit is slippery. And I slipped, fell on my back, and went right into the embankment. I went into a cesspool neck deep.
Oh,
And this was a bad situation. And I thought I was going to drown. Now, my last name is Pike, and I didn't want to be known as pooping Pike dies and shit. I was thinking of that. That was in my mind, and I was thinking I was going to die here. I was thinking, God, my gag reflex. It was like, oh my God, it was almost under my mouth. I was going under. I never had a family, never had any children, never had a lot of life experiences. And I says, I can't die like this. And we're all looking over. So I didn't yell out, or I was just too much in shock. What I did is a caterpillar type of a move to get up on the top. And then from the top, I caterpillared out very slowly. It's like quicksand material. I got out. Once I got out, I was a mob of shit. And so I flipped up on my back, looked up at the stars, and said, God, why do you put me in these places like this? And then I decided to roll around like a dog in the brush to get the bulk of it off. It had soaked, it permeated my uniform, the liquid, the feces, and everything else. So I got some of it off. And then I didn't want to, then I faced another problem. And my next problem was I need to save face. I don't want to be medically evac out of here because it could be a medical situation. I wanted to keep it a secret because I would be the laughing stock. That would be my legacy. Pike falls and poop. And there'll be all these iterations of it. And so I'm thinking now my problem is to try to hide it as best as I could and get back to camp. And so I walked into the woods and I saw this farm light, a light of a farmer's house. They speak Korean, I speak English, but I was going to somehow get some help from someone that was outside American soldiers. And I knocked on the door of a farmhouse, a complete stranger. And they did some hand signaling movements. And annyeonghaseyo, hey, hey. And they said, they motioned me. It was hand motioning. At this time, perfect English was not necessary because it was an emergency situation and they could see that. And so they told me to strip naked. I stripped naked, barefoot naked in front of a complete stranger, female. I gave all of my stuff except my rifle, my map, and my compass. I gave it to a complete stranger. They motioned that they would clean it up and bring it back to me in the next morning. And then my next problem was to walk back to camp naked through the woods, barefoot naked, and stay away from any soldiers and get back to camp secretly so I can wash up and stay and then wait for my Ajima, the woman of the house, to come bring me the uniform and the equipment. And that's what happened. The next morning, she came back and gave me all my fresh clothes and equipment. And I pretty much saved my face. I mean, two things went right that night. I got out of shit. I didn't die. And number two, I saved my face from my other soldiers. And one other soldier did know about it, but he thought my recovery was pretty cool. So he never said anything about it. But now y'all know about it. But no, that's my story of, getting into a bad situation, shit, and getting out. Yeah.
okay. I was not expecting that's where we're going to go, but that is truly an incredible story. So thank you for sharing that with us. Kind of in that vein, how did you decide that brutal honesty was going to be the root of this book, and that the idea to inspire others who were facing difficult times was going to be the tone or the message you wanted to deliver?
Because that's pretty much was my life. It was just like that story of getting into things and getting out of things and getting in these situations. They seem to be a thing. And the brutal honesty, there's only one chapter I've got where I went into a federal investigation and I had to make some names up, people's names. I couldn't put the real names there because of the sensitivity of things. And I wanted to show a pattern before I went to my federal investigation, that my flow and my tone of my words are very, very honest and open. So I'll tell you where I screwed up, such as that event. And when I don't screw up, some things happen to you in life that maybe not your fault. And I wanted, before I went and said anything bad about other people, I wanted to have honest to God, like I'm not perfect in either. So they'll know that. And that was my flow. Plus, you couldn't make this stuff anyway. You got you couldn't make any of this stuff up anyway. So they'll know the pattern just by looking at it. They'll know that I'm telling the truth. Now, I tell you when I got arrested. I tell you what happened, but then all these other bizarre events. I just wanted to have that flow of the stories.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of thinking about that, if you were not necessarily your 17-year-old self, but if a 17-year-old would come up to you and say, "I read your book, I love it. I'm thinking about going to the army myself," what would you tell them?
I said, that's cool. I would think, I would tell the 17-year-old, don't think inside the box. Don't think, in other words, just because you're going into the Army or the Air Force or whatever, try to think of the organization as a very, very large organization, just like a Fortune 500 company, maybe bigger than that. Think of it as a Coca-Cola, or think of it as there are many, many, many jobs. And just because they tell you to go into this branch or to this job doesn't mean you have to go there. Doesn't mean you're going to do that. You might find your competencies, you might find other things once you get in that you're better at, and you can move to those jobs. So I did a few of those moves. But a lot of people think, well, I'm going into infantry. That means I'm going to shoot a rifle. That might be, yeah, they may train you to do that. But if you find that you're better doing something else, you can move to that or guide to that in the organization. So show up the right place at the right time with the right attitude. 1, 2, 3. If you do that, you're doing better than most. Yeah.
That seems like good advice for any 17-year-old or really anybody who's looking to find the right path. You mentioned that when you were young, going through basic training, that you kind of had the moment where you were put in a program designed for criminals in the Army. Is there I'm sure many times throughout your 31 years that things were difficult and that you had to rely on your mental toughness, your training, your faith, whatever it was. And I'm sure it's a combination of those things. But when times got difficult, would there be a ritual that you'd practice? Would there be people you talk to? How would you find that you'd get through and ultimately persevere when things got difficult?
I had I had a family that I would talk to, my wife, and then I had some friends. I had my father at the time when he was alive. I would go and talk to them. There's times when I did go. The military has chaplains, and not necessarily that you're going to get spiritual help, but they are a person to go to talk to, chaplains. So I had a network of people that I would go and talk and run things through. I also would exercise and try to process these things. Sometimes you have a problem and you're in a deep area. Sometimes if you get alone and just process it with an exercise, a lot of people will go and hit the punching bag, or maybe they'll get on the elliptical and try to think about it and allow it to process out. So I had a number of different ways that I tried to process the deep, dark times. Yeah.
I think that's a good combination, both the exercise piece to get the body right, get the mind in a different setting, and then to ultimately lean on the advice, wisdom, and point of view of others. I think can be helpful, especially when it's more than them just telling you what to do. You realize what's important, who's important to you, and that's why you're doing these things. When writing a book like this, I'm sure there is I don't even know what the right word would be, but maybe a vetting from the Army, from the government, to make sure that the things that are in your book are accurate or acceptable for general consumption. Was there anything in that process, if that process does exist, that you did not expect or that is worth talking about?
So what we did was we stayed away from anything that was sensitive. So I am not. I know I'm considered an author, but I'm not. I think all of your viewers out there can read and write better than me. I pretty much guarantee that. But I had a ghostwriter. I had help. I had two different levels of help. Someone who was more experienced at it, and we stayed away from anything that was sensitive. We had the statute of limitations, the things that I've done that were bad. It was years ago. We don't have to worry about it now. Also, the sensitive things that we talk about in the book with the military, we just know from experience and from other people who've taken a look at the book that we're okay with that. The main thing would be names change, so we could prevent defamation and media liability. And also it's been a number of years that have gone by, so we've got the names changed and things. But no, we haven't had any pushback about the Army has not, or the military has not tried to push us back on anything on this.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. You clearly are a very modest person, because you referred yourself as someone who has difficulty reading and writing, but you've written a book that many are reading and enjoying. What has been would you say, the secret for both your longevity in the Army to put this book out, and then your uh, continued success and continued well-being outside of the Army?
Well, it's just a sort of it's a never quit thing. The book was about the hardest thing I've probably done in my life as far as long-term projects. And as far as the book is concerned, it was a vomiting type of a process. You vomit everything up that you've got, and then you allow another person, a ghostwriter, to look at the colors of the vomit and develop themes and storylines with it. So you'll have certain themes of your life that a good ghostwriter may pick up on and may want to run with it. Not every story is going to be written down, but every story needs to be vomited up. So somebody who's objective uh, can look at it and say, well, here it is. These are the things we can go with. These are the things that will be common. And it was, of course, survival, inspiration, never quit, things of that nature. This book, like I said, this thing darn near killed me. It really did. And I don't know if I would do something like this again. But it's there, and it's there. It's in the audio as well, and it's in my book. I am the narrator and I am the author, and so I think that puts it a little different. And it's from someone. This is my first book, and from someone, that doesn't know how to read and write, but I had a lot of help, and I'm very proud of it. Put it that way. I'm very proud of it. Even if nobody read it, I'm still proud of it.
It's your pride is obvious as you talk about it. Your face just lights up, and I will point out you did mention first book. So is there? I will ask: is there a possibility for a second?
Yes, and that the reason there's a possibility for a second book is because um, I got the first book out, and anybody that I pick as a ghostwriter could possibly pick up on the language and the themes and write something different, or we could create a second edition. I was thinking about writing something for the veterans groups, and how to get their benefits and things. There's a lot of stuff out there. So when I came up with this book, there was there was nothing out there as far as how to. There's nothing to kind of go by. There was no guide. Now we have a guide. We have we got an experienced ghostwriter. We got somebody who can look at something and just develop something different. Something, yeah, maybe something with the veterans, or maybe just a second edition for this book. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned that you don't consider yourself an author. You no longer are active duty in the Army. What do you consider yourself now? If you meet somebody on the street, what do you tell them that you do or who you are?
Well, I'm a podcaster, and I am telling the story about my book. That I have written a book. I guess technically, I say I'm not an author. I'm technically an author, right? But yes, but I say I am now a podcaster and telling my story, and to promote the book. So that is what I tell them, and I'm a retired military personnel, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
You mentioned writing a potential second version for the veterans. A lot of us, non-active, non-veteran, would like to properly support, properly uplift, do the right things for our active duty and our veterans. But there are, as you mentioned, a lot of options. There are some better than others. What can those of us who are outside of the military, who would like to support or help out, what should we be doing?
Well, you could volunteer if you feel like volunteering your time for a veterans organization. There's many of them everywhere. It could be the Disabled American Veterans. It could be various organizations that are in your area. There's many of them. It goes on and on. You could support them by either driving them to the hospital, or volunteering your time, or just providing money to the organization as a fund, or in their fundraisers or events that they have. Those are just a few of the things that you could do. And offhand, with me, I'm personally donating all the funds to the veterans in this book. Ain't gonna be a lot of money anyway, but I've been donating, and I will continue. I just donated. I was a sponsor at the Disabled American Veterans Winter Clinic in Aspen, Colorado, where I went there, and I was a sponsor. I skied with the veterans, and but there's just so many different venues out there to support the veterans, whether it be your time or your money.
Thank you, Jason. We started off today talking about the inspiration that your father was to you, both in writing this book, getting these stories out there. Is there anybody with the book or in general on a day-to-day that you're hoping to inspire, a hope that says, I would like to do this because of my interaction with Jason, or because I know him, I'd like my life to take this path?
Yes, usually it's going to be younger people, and like you alluded to, the young person that might go into the military, and it's not necessarily for the military. It could be someone who just wants inspiration and hope of how do I follow a path, how do I look at life and never give up. There's a guy I know not far from me. I send him these podcasts and to tell him, hey, to take a look at these things and just to get a general idea of you'd never quit. He's in college, and I think he wants to be a nurse. And I have told him not only verbally, but I've also showed him these podcasts that I've had my share of problems that are in the book, and those problems are just a part of life, the ups and downs. And I've had more of my share of problems than most people. So, and that's what I do. I can send these podcasts to folks that I think that could help them, and they could see my life and say, well, hey, I can probably do something too. Yeah.
Excellent. So we will be sure to have the podcast posted everywhere. We'll have links to the book in the show notes. Where can our listeners either connect with you directly? Again, I'll post the book in the show notes, but where can they find it if they'd like to read or listen?
Well, I have a website, jasonpike.org, jasonpike.org, but Amazon, it's on Amazon. If you type in your browser, Jason Pike, Amazon, A Soldier Against All Odds, you're going to find it there. It's in 4 different formats. You've got Kindle, the e-reader, you've got the audiobook coming from me, the horse's mouth. You got soft copy and you got hard copy. So you can find it all there. It's even on some other websites like Goodreads and Thrift Books. So you'll find it out there, even if you just put the title of it there. And I know a lot of people may not want to read it. That's cool. And you might want to listen to it, or you just might want to just listen to a podcast.
I am partial to audio. I mean, I do read my fair share of books, but after listening to you today, I think I'm going to listen to your voice for this book, because I think that the way the stories will come most to life, and it will be right from the heart for sure, listening to you tell them. Jason, we've covered a good amount of material today. Somehow we're already at time. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I probably should have this morning?
I think you did a pretty good job. I don't think you got the 12 questions in 30 minutes. Accomplished the mission on that one. Yeah, cool.
We'll take pretty good job and accomplish mission. So we'll post the website, we'll post the book in the show notes. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to doing this again.
Thank you, Mike. Take care. Thank you.